Hi again, it's Mayhem. Thanks for joining me today. I want to talk to you about something really interesting that I hope by the end of the video will teach you how to think more intelligently, which is a pretty crazy claim, I know, but I'm going to back it up. So you might be wondering first, what gives me the qualification to tell you how to think more intelligently? The answer for that is when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends, but what I did have was the reputation for being the smartest girl in school, and I have proof that I have that reputation because I got the senior superlative for being the nerdiest girl in school, called most likely to teach the teacher. That might have been why I didn't have many friends, but regardless. I think that's because I figured out very early on how to think. So if you want to become more intelligent, let's start by figuring out what is intelligence. And intelligence is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge or skills. So we can break that down into two parts. Acquiring knowledge, which could also be called curiosity, what drives you to acquire knowledge and how much you will acquire, and applying knowledge, which could be called creativity, creating things with your knowledge, doing things with it, creating. We'll save curiosity for another video, but I want to talk to you today about creativity. How to become more creative, what creativity is, how to think like a crab. So let's get creative. What is creativity? Creativity is having original ideas. Original ideas are new. Like thinking creatively is having original ideas. You might be wondering, how do I get the idea? And the answer isn't something mystical. It isn't just divine inspiration. You can break having original ideas into something very simple, something called lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is basically a synonym for creativity, and lateral means in a line, side to side, like how a crab walks. What it basically means is connecting one thing to another. This is the way that our brain works. Our brains have a bajillion neurons, and they're really only useful when they connect to each other in a web. A web is the connections between neurons, and the more connected a neuron is, the more useful it is. Ones that aren't connected, that aren't being used, get thrown away and discarded. You have to use it or lose it. So the more connections you have, that's what turns knowledge into useful knowledge. Lateral thinking is all about connecting one idea to another, connecting one neuron to another. So how do you do that? So if you're like me, you grew up playing the game Little Alchemy, and if you don't know what it is this really simple computer game where you start with only a few elements like fire, air, and water, and earth. Really simple starting elements, and you click and drag to combine them, and when you combine them, sometimes a reaction happens, and you get a third thing, the secret third thing. And you have to kind of do trial and error and drag and drop all of them in order to get all the possible combinations. And by the end of it, there's like hundreds and maybe thousands of different elements that you can create out of those original just few combinations, because you keep combining one with another. You don't know all of them to start off with. You have to make a lot of mistakes by trying to combine things that don't really work before you create like amazing like combinations, and you get more and more complex things that eventually turn into like cars and airplanes and stuff in the game. I think that that game is a really good metaphor for how to think, because creativity, lateral thinking, is about connecting as one idea to another idea, and you have to do that over and over and over as many times as you can. And it doesn't matter that most of them are going to be stupid or not work, because original ideas are when you connect something to another thing and nobody's done that before. That is an actual new idea, is when nobody has thought to connect this one thing to the other thing. The only way you're going to come up with connecting one thing to another thing that nobody's done before is if you are constantly connecting every new thing that you learn to every other thing that you have ever learned. And okay, obviously you don't need to connect everything you've ever learned, but the more that you do that and the more creative you are, the more intelligent you are. This is how to think intelligently. Half of what intelligence is creativity, which is lateral thinking, which is connecting one idea to another. So I am a very slow reader, and it's not because I can't read fast, it's because I'm a slow reader if it's a good book. Because if it's a good book, every time I read a new idea that I hadn't thought of or encountered before, I take that new idea and I kind of go into a daze where I am trying to connect it to everything that I possibly can. Because whenever you have a new idea, you have an opportunity to connect that to everything else. What's a good example of this? If you just learned what a book was, the way to use lateral thinking would be to say, could you make a book of other things? Like, could you make a book about this thing? Could you make a book about that thing? Could you make a book made of other things? Could you make a book that was made of fabric? Could you make a book that was about butterflies? And a lot of those ideas are going to be things that people have already thought of. Like, you're not going to, most of the ideas that you come up with lateral thinking, a lot of times you're going to invent things that have already been invented and be like, wow, what if there was like an underground system that transported a lot of people all at once? And you'd be like, oh, subways exist. But that's how, if you're thinking about things the way that people originally came up with them, eventually you're going to come up with something new, or you're going to see things in a new light that is actually going to be an original idea. And even if all of your ideas aren't original, at least you're having ideas, and you're using your mind as a muscle. And, you know, you have to use it or lose it, because if you don't work out the muscle of your brain, which is connecting the neurons, and using the neurons by connecting them to other things, then they start to die off, and you have synaptic pruning, which is when your brain just clears away all the stuff that you're not using. So even when you're having stupid ideas, you are actually making yourself smarter by exercising that neuron, by connecting it to an idea. You're refreshing that idea. And then maybe the next time you connect to that idea, maybe the next thing that connects to it is actually going to be a good idea. So I don't know if books made of fabric exist. Oh wait, that's like like the books about like picking your window drapes. So that does already exist. Anyways, this is how to think like a crab. And a good exercise for it is to just take a thing, anything, pick a thing, and come up with all the uses for it, all the different things you could do to it, or at it, or with it, or for it, or by it, and just brainstorm. And when you're brainstorming, there's something called a blue sky period, which is what they call it in brainstorm groups for like writing for, like, say, TV. A blue sky period is there's no wrong answers. It doesn't matter how stupid your idea is. You want to, like, every answer that you give is a point. No matter how stupid it is, no matter how bad it is. You can even purposely try to come up with the worst ideas you possibly can. You can think, what are the worst possible uses for this object? What are the worst things you could do with a water bottle? And you might come up with some creative ideas. They might actually be good ideas, even when you're trying to come up with the worst possible ideas, because those are usually things that people haven't thought of before, because people try to avoid that. So this is a shortcut to become more intelligent. This is how to use your brain. Let me know if you try it out, if you like it, if you hate it, if you're like, I've always been doing this, I've never been doing this before, I wonder why. This is, by definition, a way to become more intelligent. So if you want to be smarter than everybody, you can keep this video and not share it with anyone. But if you're like me, and you're tired of being surrounded by idiots, then maybe share this video with your best friend or the stupidest person you know. Maybe they're even the same person. I don't know. But thanks again for watching. It was really nice to have you here. Leave a comment if you hated the video. Ask me any question you want. I love to answer questions. And until next time, fare thee well. Love, Mayhem.